Well, hello everyone, this is CJ from Cyclotron. So I guess the question for you today is, how much longer is Harley Davidson Motor Company likely to survive as a company? People like to weigh in on these issues affecting Harley's operation, including me, as I have done in several previous videos. So if you notice the title of this video, I'm posing the question as to whether Harley Davidson Board of Directors is in essence a losing team relative to helping Harley Davidson survive. I approached this research for this video with an open mind, even though the headwinds that face an internal combustion engine vehicle manufacturer these days are well known. But in a nutshell, based on what I've learned, I think that the Harley Davidson Board of Directors comprises a rather weak team overall. I'll explain why I reached that conclusion, but I think we need to cover some background information and additional details. Think of it like when you were a kid and you had a chance to pick your team members for schoolyard games. Did you just pick people you were friends with, or did you try and pick the people who would give you the best chance of winning? First, I'm going to dive into who is on the board of directors, describe what the qualifications and industry experience of these individuals is, and summarize what I think it means for the long-term viability of the Harley Davidson Motor Company. As I go through these details, think about whether you would pick these people to be on the Harley team. Before I get into the details associated with Harley's board members, let's first start off by addressing just what the purpose is for our board of directors. For publicly traded companies such as Harley Davidson, the Securities and Exchange Commission requires that not only does there need to be a board of directors who are supposed to represent the interests of the shareholders, but that most of these directors need to be independent, that is, outside the day-to-day operations of the company. The board of directors helps set the overall direction for the company, establishes executive compensation, and provides many other important functions for both the short-term and long-term viability of the company. Nominees for the board of directors are selected by the company shareholders. In the case of Harley Davidson, approximately half of the outstanding shares of stock are owned by institutional investors. So with that in mind, let's meet the board of directors for Harley Davidson as listed in their most recent proxy statement for May 12, 2022. 9 out of 10 of these directors are considered to be independent outside directors. The only insider is the current Harley Davidson CEO, Jochen Zeitz. As I mentioned in the introduction, I'm going to introduce you to each of the board members and list their major current and past affiliations to provide insight into how applicable their experience and capabilities appear to be relative to representing the interests of Harley Davidson shareholders. Also, in assessing the success of the companies affiliated with these independent board members, I'm going to look at not only how well that industry is doing as a whole, but how well that specific company's stock has done for the last 5 years. That way you can get an idea of what the trends have been even before the impacts of COVID and the associated supply chain disruptions took effect. I'm also going to suggest other companies that could be considered as candidate sources for future board members for Harley Davidson. We'll go through this in alphabetical order as listed in their proxy statement. The first board member is Troy Alstead. He's most recently been associated with non-publicly traded companies in the restaurant industry. He retired from Starbucks in 2016 as their chief operating officer. He's been a director of the HD board since 2017. Obviously, it's hard for me to discern how well these private companies that he's associated with have done in recent years. Also, he's been away from Starbucks for more than 5 years, so I won't present that stock chart. He is, however, on some other boards such as Levi Strauss Company and Array Technologies. Let's look at the 5-year chart for Levi's. That stock is down over 20% in the last 5 years. Not good. What's worse yet is the price of Array Technology stock is down over 57% in the last 5 years. Next is R. John Anderson, who retired as the CEO of Levi Strauss in 2011. He's been on the Harley board since 2010. Apparently one of his main areas of expertise is global strategy. Number 3 is Michael Cave, a retired vice president at Boeing. He left in 2014. Now his experience at Boeing goes back several decades, so I'll skip that stock chart. But he does also serve as a board member at Ball Corporation, which includes packaging and aerospace divisions. Looking at that company's 5-year chart, they're up over 19%. Next, we've got Jared Dordeville, who's the new director of Harley as of this year. He's a partner at a private investment company, so I don't have any information on their financials. Next, and this one surprised me because I had no idea, is James Farley Jr. He's been on the Harley board since last year, and who also happens to be the CEO of Ford Motor Company as of 2020. Ford's 5-year stock chart is about dead flat, and it's no secret that Ford Motor Company is in real trouble with a host of supply chain, dealer network, and quality control issues. Why he thinks he has the time to help out Harley Davidson with the looming disaster that is Ford Motor Company is beyond me. Next is Alan Golston. He's been on the Harley board since 2017 and is currently president of the U.S. program for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. He's also on the board of directors for Stryker Corporation, which is a medical technology company. That company has done very well with their stock, which is up over 44% in the last 5 years. Next is Sarah Levinson. She's been associated with various media companies since the 1990s and has been on the Harley board of directors since 1996. You heard me right. She's been on the board since before Harley started making the twin cam motorcycles. Next is N. Thomas Linebarger, who has been a director at Harley since 2008. He is currently the CEO of Cummins, Inc. That company's stock is up over 25% in the last 5 years. Next is Mary Rose Sylvester. She's been on the Harley board since 2016. She's also on the boards for Waste Management and Vontier Corporation. The 5-year performance between these two companies is a mixed bag, with Waste Management stock up over 111% and Vontier's being down over 46%. Finally, we have Jochen Zeitz, who is currently Harley Davidson's CEO and has held that position since 2020. He's been on the Harley board of directors since 2007. It was a group of shareholders who pushed the board to fire Matt Levitich and elevate Zeitz to the CEO position. For reference, let's look at the 5-year stock chart for Harley. As 7 of the 10 current board of director members have been involved with Harley Davidson during that time period. So we see that Harley stock is down over 14% in this time period. So I consider that Harley Davidson's biggest challenges is how to survive in the short term without also dooming the long-term viability of the company. For example, recently Harley Davidson decided to cut production, abandon over 40 international markets, including one of the biggest motorcycle markets in the world, which is India. Harley, like all other vehicle manufacturers, is still having major issues associated with supply chain problems and increased production costs due to rising inflation. So let's look at the summary of the skill sets for the current Harley Davidson board of directors. It looks like there's some broad capabilities, but I also notice there are a few areas that are either under or overrepresented. For example, 9 of the 10 directors have experience in international business. A previous proxy statement listed this category as global sales. Do you really need that many people with international business experience when Harley has pulled out of so many global markets? Harley's also light in the area of technology, digital, and cyber. This is certainly a more forward-looking category. A category that appears to be significantly underrepresented for Harley is that of engineered product development, with only 3 of 10 directors with experience in that category. So it looks like there may be some serious board deficiencies related to coming up with innovative technology for future sales. What do you think about the ability of the board to support Harley Davidson's stated strategy? Here it is from their website. The other thing that I noticed is that these board members have had really long tenures at Harley Davidson. That might make them prone to sticking with the status quo or even falling in with groupthink. Also, if you look at the performance of the Harley Davidson stock and the stock of these affiliated companies with the board members, it's definitely a mixed bag. You can see too that there's a lot more demographic diversity among current board members as compared to past board members, but the industry experience is really not that diverse at all. I think that Harley's biggest challenges for the short term is navigating all of the supply chain disruptions while trying to keep material and production costs from spiraling out of control, particularly due to inflation. We know that Harley's had to shut down production for several weeks earlier this year due to issues with a brake component vendor. Having people on the board with strong supply chain management skills and engineering skills would definitely help in these areas, which I believe Harley is sorely lacking in their current board makeup. Another thing to consider is I think that the board could benefit from an infusion of new members. One company they could recruit from would be an executive associated with, say, Walmart. That company's stock is up over 66% in the last 5 years. If Harley had a 12-year term limit, that would eliminate 3 of their outside directors, and Zeitz never would have been in a position 2 years ago to have been elevated to CEO of Harley Davidson. Walmart's also able to handle supply chain logistics and supply chain costs about as well as any company out there. Again, that begs the question as to why Jim Farley is on Harley's board. If Ford declares bankruptcy, like a lot of people think they might, Farley is likely to be still functioning as CEO because, as I mentioned, the near-term prospects for Ford Motor Company do not look good at all. Ford has thousands of vehicles that can't be sold because they're missing the Ford oval logo, if you can believe it. There are also over 40,000 Ford vehicles that are being parked in the lots of a raceway in Kentucky since they can't be finished and sold due to a lack of computer chips. Because of these issues, Ford just replaced their supply chain leader. Ford is also having serious quality control issues with their Ford Broncos and Mavericks that are assembled in Mexico. How exactly is any input from Ford's current CEO going to be beneficial to Harley Davidson? Or is it simply a case of misery-loving company? Ford's practically at war with their dealerships over vehicle pricing and deciding which dealers get to pay for the privilege to sell Ford's EVs. Let's see, what would be another company that Harley could consider for recruiting future board members? How about Caterpillar? They're a major manufacturer of construction equipment who sells their product worldwide. Their stock is up over 43% in the last 5 years, and they're apparently solving the same set of problems that Harley is facing in terms of manufacturing. Yet they're not pulling out of the majority of international markets as Harley Davidson has. Or even a company like Apple. I'm personally not a big fan of Apple products, but there's no denying that many people own or want to own them. Also, look at their stock price. It's up a massive 293% over the last 5 years. Well, that's my quick take on the board of directors for Harley Davidson. There's definitely some bright spots, but I think there definitely needs to be some rotation in directors to bring in new blood, especially from more successful companies as the ones I've mentioned perhaps. So what do you think about this idea that maybe looking at a company's board of directors could give you insight into the company's future prospects? Clearly, the current board of directors for Harley Davidson likes the direction the company is going. After all, they raised the compensation of their CEO, Jochen Zeitz, from a total of $9 million in 2020 to over $18 million in 2021. But is Harley doing well enough to justify that type of executive compensation? The second highest level of executive compensation in 2021 was $2 million for their CFO, Gina Gettner. I mean, let's face it, Harley's current stock price is only $2 a share more than it was in the early months of 2020, just before Zeitz became CEO. If you like this deep dive on an aspect of Harley Davidson Motor Company that you probably won't find anywhere else on YouTube, please be sure to hit those subscribe and notification buttons and leave a comment. Thanks very much for watching, and please stay tuned for future videos.